Hello, everyone. Welcome to Imposter Syndrome stream number 2.
I thought that was completely on purpose.
Right, so good. It's called Imposter Stream number 2.
What confidence.
Right, exactly. That's 90% of it. And today we are going to begin by talking about something called a game design framework,
Yes.
which may resemble some things that you're used to, but mostly is a framework within which we can create games and share things more freely and avoid being tied maybe to one or another specific system if that's not something you're into.
Right, I was about to ask, what do you mean by framework?
Okay, yes, yeah. So later we will also be talking about some fiction in the world Cassie's talking about. I wanted to touch on that, but we'll talk about my stuff a little bit first, and then we'll jump over to hers, but I wanted to tease that for anybody that might be interested, that we'll be talking about some fiction in a world where the astral embodiment of magic is decaying.
Basically, yep.
Right, and we'll leave you with not having any idea with what that means, and that's okay until about a little while.
A little later.
But so you say, what do you mean a framework?
Yeah.
So a game design framework. So I have been thinking about this a lot. And we are doing a Kickstarter called Imposter Syndrome. You can see the link down in the description. But as part of this, I am planning to release the initial version of something I've been thinking about, planning on, sitting on for a long time, that I call a game design framework. And we landed on this concept during a Tabletop Terrors video once because we were trying to figure out what to call it. Well, it's not a game, but it's not a game necessarily, but it's more like all the pieces you need to make games.
Okay, the elements for it.
Exactly, but I've also seen products out there that say, we are all the elements you need to create games. But what's funny is, it was actually like the few things I've seen, they're games, and you can make it all. And I'm like, well, it's funny, they haven't stepped outside of that paradigm of a game, so to speak, you know? And I feel like doing that and creating more of an open landscape that people can create games and more easily put them together with confidence and ease, we can play more games and have more meaningful discussions about games, you know?
Okay.
So a framework is just this structure that allows us to talk about games in a way that basically allows us to have more productive conversations about it, and hopefully allows other people that are interested in getting into the subject an easy introduction into game design and what it can be to create games for people.
Oh, awesome.
So part of what I'm really interested in is that, so D&D recently changed. They announced kind of that they're switching from a model where they were releasing versions every once in a while, and instead they're going to what I can only describe as like the competitive, like collectible game model, where when there's a competitive game that's being played, like Magic the Gathering, or when we played HeroClix or something like that, what happens is there is a rule set and everybody like has to keep updated. Now, this is instead of saying, okay, every year we're going to change all the rules and everybody has to figure out what the brand new rules are, which not every year necessarily, but it's kind of what they do with D&D, right?
Right.
In this case, it seems like what they're going toward is more like patch notes and updates. Hey, we changed this, we changed that, we fixed it. I think overall for D&D that's potentially better, but for people creating content for it, not to say that it's bad, but I can see how those things will begin to bump, where if the game is constantly changing and you're trying to make content for it, well, I've worked in software long enough to know that, well, sometimes the creator of a product will make a breaking change. You will have made a product, and they'll go, okay, you know what, that rule that's in there, you know, we're going to change it or we're going to get rid of it. And maybe that's the rule that your content was based on. And
Right, really relies on.
It's not a major issue, but to some degree it's becoming more and more clear to me that I would like more people to have more access, more access to utilities and concepts that allow them to sit down and create a game as easily and with as much confidence as when they sit down and prepare a D&D 5th edition session. They've read the books, they know it all, they go, okay, I know now what I should be doing and I'm putting this together, and I think with this game design framework we can make a way for people to sit down and make a whole game experience for players.
Got it. So what's in this framework?
Okay, so, yeah, and so that's a very good question. What is in the framework? So, it starts out with naming and labeling everything, right? Okay. So we have games, and we have a lot of different games out there, and they call many different things, right? There's hit points, and there's XP, and there's experience points, and there's victory points, and there's... But the point... Say point more.
But the point...
but the idea I'm getting at is unifying the concepts so that we can refer to them. So numbers that go up and down is called a counter. So that when you and I are talking about a game, it's a very simple concept, but when you and I are talking about a game and I say counter, you know what I mean. Oh yeah, it's numbers that goes up and down. You say, oh, is it a negative counter? Can it be a negative counter? Great question. Oh yes, no, this particular counter doesn't go negative.
Right.
That's the type of very boring conversation we can have with a game design framework. But the thing is, once we get our vocabulary in order and we can begin to build that, then what we're able to do is we're able to design pieces, sort of a library of these agnostic components that players can put together in order to make games basically more easily. Josh is here. How's it going, Josh?
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Very good to hear from you, yeah. But so, after you are done defining your vocabulary, or not done, but as you do that more and have more discussions, what you're able to do then is create components, and some of which I have a lot of ideas for, where you can say, oh, this is the type of thing you can put in your game. So like, for example, one we talked about before was the hub pattern, where players have a base that they go back to, that they can kind of do work on, and they can put effort into, and grows along with them. You've seen this in a bunch of different games. But a framework like this would codify that into this abstract thing that says, no, you can pick from a catalog. You can go, oh, I want my game to be a hub-type game. What I now need to do is take the town or the place or the ship or whatever that the players are on, and I get to do the fun part of building it and crafting it. I get to say,
managing my characters or repairing the town like in Darkest Dungeon.
Exactly, but as a game creator, I get to craft the situation where my players are now crafting the town. Okay. Because I was able to pick from a catalog this choice to go, oh, there's this hub pattern where players go out and complete missions to get resources and, maybe gain stuff, gain experience, and come back, and then they spend it and do it. There's like two halves of the game,
Yeah.
Other examples are more simple things like the idea of having soak for armor. We call it soak. So in Dungeons & Dragons, and many other role-playing games, it's an extremely common pattern. When you get hit, you take hit points.
Right.
Or you take damage, right, to your hit points usually. So a lot of times we roll and we go, oh, did I hit you? Okay, no, I did, or yes, I did. Yes, I did, or no, I didn't, right? So I can miss, but if I hit you, then I go, how much did I hit you for? What it becomes is a little bit of a game of, well, whose weapon does more? Who's more likely to hit more often? It's a little bit of just a timer where we go, okay, if we run this all the way to the end, one of you is going to have better luck, a better weapon, a better this, whatever, and it's going to happen.
Right.
But I have to remember where I was going with it. Oh, so that's a common pattern we see. But soak, I like this idea of armor soak. We see it in a game like Star Wars Edge of the Empire and those adjacent style games, by Fantasy Flight games. And so when you have soak, when I hit you, you go, oh, there's a certain amount of damage that when somebody does it to me, I automatically we say shrug it off. That's like, for me, from Hero Clicks is what we would call it, You shrug off this damage. So doing it that way instead creates a situation where when you're playing the game, there are certain enemies that can't really hurt you as much. Or as you level up and that number goes up of this stuff you shrug off if you're a powerful person. Dude, right? Yeah, creature is what I wanted to say, but right, powerful character is maybe the word I should use. You create a progression system within the game that changes it from being simply that, oh, I hit you, you hit me over and over and over again. Well, I'm going to win because I have more hit points and a better sword. With a soak system, suddenly, even if you just have a set amount that's soaked each round, that's something. But beyond that, now you have the ability to say, okay, maybe each round you can soak that amount, but you can spend them to do other things. Now you have an economy going.
Yeah.
I feel like you can take that and upgrade it simply from hit points and what we're used to and what, in my opinion, isn't necessarily the best way to do things. And now we have this fully featured system. I want to take that and package it for people to easily learn about it and go, yeah, I'm going to just put that right in my game. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to name this, and there we go. That's it. Just the same way we might pull a third-party, story off of the shelf and try to play D&D 5th edition with it.
Okay. Cool.
So basically, as well as those components, there would also be game design patterns and anti-patterns, ways to do things, ways not to.
Anti-patterns?
Anti-patterns. So this brings up a good point.
I said that funny.
Oh, right. I wasn't sure if you were repeating it because you weren't sure or because I said it funny.
Oh, I was curious as to what you meant. What's an
anti-pattern?
I was curious as to what you meant, though. What is
no, that's fair. That's fair. So my understanding is it's almost like this. Right, well, let's say this. A design pattern often is a commonly reoccurring problem that a lot of people face. You know, we see it in software design, but in game design, it's the same. Okay. I want to solve this problem that I'm constantly finding myself solving. Okay. As a design pattern, I say, well, this is what a lot of people have got together and said, this is kind of the way we should do this.
Right.
This design pattern, we go, okay, based on the way these things work, this is a good way to handle this. An anti-pattern is, based on the way all these things work, this is something that could look like a helpful solution, but is actually counterproductive. And this anti-pattern is for me to show you how. I'm going to show you how not to do it, so that at the end I can show you how bad it really is. Rather than just saying, don't do this, I go, here's what would happen if you did that. That's an anti-pattern.
Okay.
So a good example of that is one that we like to talk about, or as it came up at Tabletop Terrors, is...
Yeah, I definitely need to know.
Perfect, right? So say, for example, you're in a game and you want it to be a really tense fight where players are pretty evenly matched, right? And they're going back and forth.
Yeah.
An anti-pattern would be, in that situation, as players are damaged, making their statistics go down. They're less likely to hit as they get hurt more. This creates a situation where one player, if they can get an advantage, is going to keep that advantage because if the person that hurts the other first gains a big advantage. If by hurting you, I hurt your chances of hitting me, it creates a situation where the worse you get, the lower the chances you win, the higher the chances I win. This can kind of spiral out of control because instead of a tense game that's really close, now suddenly I'm just winning because I hit you first or you hit me first. Totally unintentional consequence.
It's just decided right away, too early.
Exactly. But some people may not realize that from the outset. Hey, doing it this way, I'll make it so that when they get hit, they take the damage and it hurts their stats too. Well, here's an anti-pattern to show you why sometimes that can not have the intended or productive effect that you want. So that is a game design framework in a very quick sort of mashed together a shell, let's say. But if you are more curious about that, check out the Kickstarter. What we are doing is for $5, you get access to the Imposter Syndrome zine, which is a collection of articles and different things. Cassie, we're going to move on to some of the fiction she's working on, but for me it will mean initial versions of the game design framework, if enough people are interested, and of a game called All Else is Rubbish, where you are going to fly planes and fight against each other and customize them.
Gonna be freaking cool.
And the game will hopefully use these is going to use these same agnostic components, so you'll be able to see both the game design framework and how it works together. But as well as that, there's going to be some fiction in there.
Of course.
And so tell us about, as we discussed earlier, there's the fiction in a world where the actual embodiment of magic is potentially dying and decaying. Can you tell me what do you mean, let's say, by the magical embodiment, or the embodiment of magic in a world? How does that work?
So, honestly, it all started with a book that my sister lent me. I don't know which one is in it, but it had the simple and classic equation of E equals mc squared. Mass times energy. Shit. Oh gosh, what is it?
I can look it up. I don't know exactly. It's
It's okay. It's been a long time since
but I just can't. It's the mass energy equivalence. I couldn't remember the name of it. Of course, we're very popular. I have a pen with it. That was a gift.
Right, that's okay.
But yeah, so mass energy equivalence.
Right. I don't have notes in front of me.
That's okay.
But I wanted to take that and be like, oh, it would be cool if, like, I don't know, there was a physical embodiment of that energy in the world, basically.
Yeah.
Or in the universe, which then lands and is hiding, essentially.
So you say lands, this embodiment of magic. You know, you're saying, I love this mashing together, this juxtaposition of a little bit science and a little bit fantasy to just be like, it's more like unknown mystery, you know?
Yeah.
So you say it's landed here. What do you mean landed? Yeah.
Well, it decided to basically burrow into the world.
Oh, like another reality, so to speak.
Yeah, it came from a different, I guess, an alternate universe.
Yeah, kind of.
Trying to run away from some greater thing. which may or may not come up later.
Yeah, yeah, and a place potentially where it didn't necessarily have a physical manifestation the same way
Correct.
it might in this world, right?
Yes. So having a physical form in this place hurts it, so it's slowly decaying. But in doing that, it is releasing energy and affecting the world that it's living on.
So it releases, it's decaying somewhere, or it's burrowed deep in the earth in
Yeah.
this fantasy world of relatively low technology, but with some
Yeah.
magic, you know. So this isn't necessarily, there's not fracking, they're not going to come across this thing, but it is releasing this chemical, let's say, and it has an effect on the world. What effect does that chemical seeping out, you know, slowly, this thing very slowly over decades, centuries potentially decaying, what effect does that have?
So probably with its initial landing, there would have been some effect, which is going to bring up why there's maybe magic in some other parts of the world besides where it exists. I haven't quite decided that yet. But I do want to touch on those as well, that is only one. Because of its existence, there is magic, and it's popped up convergently or independently on its own elsewhere. I don't know if it's going to be related.
But you're saying, so magic, again, there's this heavy air quotes, magic. There are different types of magic around the world.
It's been able to pop up because of this thing's literal existence in the universe and being so close, but they might not have actually run into the chemicals that the creature exudes.
I see. Okay, yeah. So again, there's a lot of mystery there where the creature is the root cause, but this isn't necessarily something that's known to everyone, but we know it, and especially talking about the project, it's cool to know that all of it kind of stems from that.
Yeah, only a couple, definitely one type of people. Oh, gosh.
Like a culture, say? Yeah, what do you mean?
One culture. Thank you.
Is like heavily affected by the...
Is heavily affected by it. They were once human, and for now, they're being called elves. I'd love to find another phrase for it. Another name for them. But they are very similar to the elves that we know.
Yeah, in the sense they share a lot of similarities, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of living long, very...
But none of the stories that I have are actually about them. So...
Oh, fair, right? That's a really good point. Is that,
so
though that does exist in the world, that's actually a really good point. So, in this same world, there are a lot of other things happening. Yes. There are a few other
we have
storylines, so to speak.
An immortal king who is basically... Well, he seems to live forever, and he lives through different avatars, and no one knows really how that works, and there is a mystery for that. Some people want to find out how... Why does he continue to live?
Exactly. In a world where people generally aren't immortal, how is this king managing to...
Why is he immortal?
And maybe, because I do you think some people don't think it's the same person? You say he lives through these avatars. Is it like, well, people kept naming themselves Julius Caesar. At some point, in a society, if you think about it, you're like, oh, another Julius Caesar? Is it the same guy? Like... Do people realize it's this person that's living out and like this immortal life, or no?
They do think that it is somebody living out an immortal life that is moving between those bodies, in succession.
Kind of like I see, like tradition. A ritual or something. That's what they believe is happening.
But no one is aware. Very few people, let's say, are aware of what his actual body consists of.
I see.
Because it's kept alive by other means.
Yeah, I got you. But basically, so he has people convinced that he is this god king, you could say, that is immortal and passes through these bodies. And there's like this kind of picture of that is on the front, the front-facing picture. Right. And like you said, then there's maybe a little bit of an insidious backstory of what he's really doing to keep this up and
exactly
to be able to keep doing that. So that's really cool. So that's one part of the world.
That's one part of the world that we're going to potentially explore with Grismack and Varga, which are a pair of characters that I'm very happy to introduce to you guys.
Okay, yeah. So Grismack and Varga.
Grismack comes from a people where usually the coming of age ceremony includes being blessed by these sages. The sages in this world are usually long-living animals. Think Princess Mononoke, because I freaking love it. It's so good. Kind of like that.
Like forest spirits, like the things, that kind of thing you mean, from
like
Princess Mononoke? Yeah, exactly. These big forest spirits that live a really long time and can speak.
But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're animals, but they're conscious and sentient and speaking and totally, yeah.
And the idea is that, like, you are given this gift of being a werewolf because you are helping to protect our children, blah, blah, blah.
And just not to bury the lead there, basically they're endowed with the ability to turn into a werewolf.
Correct.
You're saying
Yes.
That's what the sages grant them with is.
And that's a blessing. It's not a curse.
Exactly.
It's a blessing.
In this case, it's a blessing. It's something that they enjoy taking on. It's probably an honor of some sort. It's something they like. You know,
it's a ritual. It's
a
rite
ritual.
of
Yeah, it's like exactly like it's a good thing and an expected thing. So, Grismack.
Grismack basically. Let's see, his people, and then an approaching culture, probably from the immortal God King, I believe. They kind of run by like a medieval kind of peasant kind of system, your stereotypical one. I guess our expected Western one.
Right? I get you. Yeah, exactly.
They're encroaching on their territory. Grismack makes some bad decisions that result in, some of his brothers basically dying.
So yeah, there's like they're fighting. There are other werewolves. They're together. There's like a battle.
Yes, there's a battle of some kind, and he's ignored the counsel of both his people and whatever counsel has come from the sages through messages. So they're like, hey, we're gonna take away your blessing, and instead it is a curse. So the werewolf curse is now in the form of a smaller wolf that he tries to pass off as a dog among people all the time.
But so basically this power was like this blessing that they gave him because of decisions that he made and getting his brothers killed and potentially, telling them things he shouldn't have been telling them, poisoning them against them, right? It's taken away, but in that, basically, it's being stripped out of him.
Correct.
And now it's an animal that he has to care for, right?
Yes.
And that expects things of him, I guess.
It's an animal that he has to care for, but because it was a part of him, it's also going to be smarter than a regular, canine would be. And for magic's sake, it is going to be able to talk to him, of course, and a select few other characters.
And you say he has to pass it off as a wolf, but he's going into town and everything, and he has or pass it off as a dog.
He's going into town because the sages have told him basically that you won't find any friends here anymore, and you're gonna have to go live with mankind now.
I see. He used to live in the woods with the wolves and kind of this very be one with nature and that culture, and now it's like, no, you got to go live with the regular people in society with clothes on.
Exactly.
You're not accepted here, so.
Yeah.
But now he's got also this dog that nobody is, or dog, again, maybe air quotes, that everybody's like leery of, probably, right?
You have this impulsive creature who is aware of her existence, Varga, because she feels incomplete because she shouldn't exist. She is supposed to be a part of him or probably a part of the sages. There is no in between. So what is this that she's stuck in?
Right, that's a good point. There's like this consciousness that.
So there's anger and resentment there. So they're gonna, there's gonna be hopefully some personal growth between them there. But we're going to get to meet the Explorer, another cool character, reoccurring character.
So Pigpug had a question. He said, is he a permanent werewolf? When they're endowed with this blessing, is it a permanent werewolf thing? Or can they switch back and forth?
They'd be able to switch back and forth.
So it's not necessarily a full moon thing, it's more of a transformation thing. But overall it is like a dog-like creature, that transformation and everything.
Yeah.
But then once the blessing is stripped, at that point, instead of being able to transform, he now is burdened.
He is always stuck in human form now, and he has to take care of this wild animal who is resentful of him, and he has to live now in cities and whatnot, and this wild animal doesn't like that, so there's going to be conflict there.
Yeah. It's more like a child than a companion, really.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, you have to take care of it, and it doesn't necessarily want to be, it didn't ask to be born, it's like, but it's here, and now you have to deal with it, and
It's here, now you have to deal with it. And I was thinking it might be interesting to have them kind of explore the mystery of the God King and see if they're going to discover what he's all about.
Right, as a part of their personal journey and the story they go through, because they're going to be together and go through things and be a part of the story, other people's storylines. But in this case, it's like maybe they'll be part of uncovering, the storyline uncovering the God King and showing maybe people, showing him to people what he really is.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah.
And we'll get to meet the Explorer, which takes me to another story, which is going to take in, like, let's say Neolithic times.
Okay, yeah.
In this same world.
Same world, yeah.
Same world.
Where this embodiment of magic is still decaying. Again, it's doing this for a very long time, right?
Yep, that thing is still existing.
It's just a thing that's happening sort of in the backdrop.
Correct.
I guess I shouldn't mention it as much. It's not really a major feature. It's just like a...
It was, it's what started things.
Exactly.
Basically.
It's the catalyst.
Catalyst, thank you.
And I like
Perfect
mentioning it
word.
because it's a really cool thing and it's the name of the stream. So, but yeah, sorry. Continue. So the Explorer and the Neolithic times of this world.
So the Explorer is, before she was an explorer, she was a warrior. A regular person with a regular name. I haven't named her yet.
Oh yeah, okay. Right. Not there yet.
She's not a huge part of this thing, but she became a follower of a character who, her name is going to be, changed throughout the story.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Or throughout her life. Perhaps
exactly.
Not throughout the story.
But as the eras go by, she'll be known by different things,
Yeah. And this character, as a child, basically stumbled onto magic in a very little innocent way that I really like. Which is simply by, babbling and kind of playing with language. And she slowly stumbles across, let's say, words of power that allow her to do certain things. So this is the creation of basically spell casting and spells.
Oh,
and that's
okay,
that's where it starts, is with this one person who, there's no particular reason as to why she happens to be the one. I think it's just the spontaneity of it. Like, she's stumbling across these words,
Exactly. Why did some of the best composers compose the music they did? Who chose them? Well, they were babbling, in their own way. They created their own kind of magic. They were playing. That's a much better way to put it.
Playing and experimenting.
And they created magic from that, Exactly. Why them, other than, we tell their story now because it was them.
Exactly. So I'm thinking that, this... So from this young girl, she is basically going to become a warlord of some kind. Because, there's somebody out there that was bigger and stronger than her tribe, than her people. And eventually they got pushed to a point where they just can't run anymore.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And she's like, what else can I do with this power that I have? And, push comes to shove, she's going to push back, and she's going to push back hard. And a lot of people leading up to this phase have heard about, various magic feats coming from this tribe. Maybe probably a lot of healing or whatnot.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say I love the word miracles. That's often
miracles,
what we hear, especially. It's like we don't call it magic; we call them miracles.
So she's going to get followers, and eventually she decides to give those followers some kind of immortality. And they help her lead her armies.
Right? Basically, she's like you said, she gets encroached upon, she's fed up, she decides she's done with it, and she
decides to assert
a supernatural
her will.
Army, right?
Yep, because she's like, this is just not working anymore.
Yeah. But in doing that, so you mentioned that through these eras she has different names, but at this point, when she decides to do that,
during her warrior phase, she's I thought about a couple names, and I decided after a while that I'm going to do Azula.
Okay.
I love the sound of that.
But basically this ruler, or at least this well-known person, this creator of magic, a discoverer of magic in the world, has this name, but then when they're pushed to this brink, they become Azula, this other name, and then later more events take place, and again they change once again, right? They have another name.
Exactly.
So it's like just this journey this character goes through.
Right. And her warriors, because some of them are, those guys are immortal and live for a long time, we'll get to meet the Explorer, which was a warrior, and then in another story we'll get to meet the Alchemist, who is going to introduce us to a mushroom-based culture.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I'm really excited. I don't even know how to explain that one. But they're going to be able to, Mycelium will be able to kind of talk to them in their own way, and...
So basically, there's going to be like a
I had
supernatural...
soldiers and stuff planned with
Yeah.
like cool mushroom shields. It's cool.
And mushroom
I'm
armor.
excited.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that more next week.
Right,
We'll wrap
I
up a
know.
little bit, but that'll be a part of the myco-culture. I don't know why I like calling that. I think that's what you called
It's
it
fun,
one
right?
time. But the myco-culture. But yes, this culture that leans heavily on mushrooms for food and for armor and for housing and for war.
Yeah.
All these things. It's just incorporated into everything. I think it's really cool. So.
Yeah. And the alchemist is also going to show us that like there's giants in this world as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, Discover Giants. I really like this fantasy-ish world. That's the closest thing we can call it, but it's low magic, but it seems like one of a lot of discovery and mystery, and I really like that. Whereas a lot of times there's like a level of stuff that's accepted. Like you're just like, oh, well, there's magic. We just don't talk about that. We just do magic every day, and nobody questions it, So I like that I don't know, slight realism, that magic popping up in different places, it having a root cause that's something physical in the world. All of these things, I think, will just create a really cool tone.
Right, and I guess I want to go back and add to the war story, basically, the warmonger story. She does also make the mistake of, like, giving magic to the wrong person.
Oh, yes,
You
okay,
know?
so the beginning of, like, Azula's,
And that's-
this person that became Azula.
That's partly why she starts to fight back so aggressively too, is because somebody has her power that is now turned on her, and she's like, "Oh God,
I see,
made
yeah.
a mistake."
Yeah, she shared it, and she learned her lesson that maybe she shouldn't have.
Right.
No, that's a big
Yeah.
deal. That's great. I think it's like, I don't know, I think in a way, especially through fiction, potentially a justifiable reason to go to war for your people. These things you've described, being pushed out and encroached upon and just trying to do your thing, but
Yes.
everybody else is pushing you too far,
Exactly.
I love that. So, so this has been a wonderful stream. Thank you, everybody, for
thank
joining
you.
us for as long as you have. Join us next week for another stream, but definitely back us or check out, at the very least, the Kickstarter. There is a link in the description. Imposter Syndrome. For just $5, you get a ton of articles and different things. If you're curious about game design, curious about fiction, any of these things we're doing, click that link and back us there, and I don't think you'll be sad.
Yeah, thank you for the support.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and Spanish Chair.